Hello everybody, it's Elagatua, and I am back with round 2 of Smacky Cup 3. This round was played on the map called Scavenger, which from what I can tell is a bit of a classic. It's an S-rank map. I think it might be in the Hall of Fame as far as maps go, and it's a really good solid map, and I was glad to see it in this tournament. But it is a small map in terms of its size, and whenever you have a small map, oftentimes the details matter a lot. So in this map review and in the replay review, I'm going to try to go into even more detail than usual because some of these little details actually matter a lot more on this map. And I'm going to try to be very thorough in pointing out everything that I can think of as we go through it. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the bases. So we got a base here, the third base is here, and then there's another base back here. And then for player 2, you got your starting infantry there, here, and here are your 3 bases. And whenever you look at a map for the first time, if you are not familiar with this map, it's always good to just look at the pathing from all the bases towards the center of the map, because that will often give you an indication of how the map is going to play and what the primary job of each of the bases is going to be in terms of like what units get built and things like that. So sometimes you'll have bases that are all on a diagonal, but that's actually not the case on this map because this base is actually a little bit further back than the other 2, which are on a diagonal. Additionally, this base is blocked by 2 pipe seams. So you can't directly get into the center of the map from the center base without busting through the pipe seams. So actually, the base with the fastest path to the center of the map is going to be this base. And you can see here, you can just kind of come through this direction, or you can go through this direction, and you have to go through one forest tile no matter which way you go, but that's going to get you to the center of the map with only kind of one tile of slowness. And these forest tiles are 3 moves away from the base, so even a 5 movement unit like an artillery or a medium tank is not going to have inefficient movement being deployed from this base because you're not going to get like blocked by the woods and lose an additional point of movement or additional square of movement as you would if it were like 1 tile back. So in the early game, because this base is your fastest way towards the center of the map, oftentimes this base is going to be your vehicle base, especially for tanks, because you can get farther with tanks from this base than you could when they were built from any other base. Let's look at the other bases. If we want to get into the center of the map from this base, we actually need to go around this way, which is a little weird, but it's not horrible, and at least there's no woods in the way, so it's not a terrible route. But for this base, if we're going to the center of the map, we need to go up and then through a forest there and then down again and then over to the right. So this is really horrible pathing because of the mountain, because of the forest, and just because you have to go up and then down. So you really don't want to be using this base to send units to the center here. However, what this base is good for is for getting up into this corner, because another major feature of this map is this river, or I guess the sea tiles that are blocking much of this path to the top side of the map. So you can't get through the center area here. So if you want to get to the top up here, then you have to go either this way or up through this way. So that's a little bit limiting, and what this means is that this is going to be an infantry base often for a while, because you're going to be wanting to send a lot of infantry kind of up in this direction, and also building vehicles from this base to get to the center of the map is pretty inefficient compared with this base. One exception though, if we look at the center of the map, we've got this river that's kind of going through the center of the map. And if you look at the terrain here, there are a ton of shoals leading all the way to the center. And so if we look at this path here, we go up through here, and then there's a city, and then down here, and it extends all the way to the other side of the map. So this entire path here is completely uninterrupted shoals. And this means that recons get insane movement when they are built from this base. And actually you can take a recon from this base, and you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and get it onto this city in one move. And then you can send it all the way 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you can get a recon all the way from this base to this city in 2 moves, which will give you vision of the center of the map, or even all the way to this tile, although this tile is not very defensible. But the point is that you can get vision to the center of the map very, very quickly if you build your recons from that top base. So despite this base being a little bit farther back, there's still a way to get some units to the center of the map extremely quickly because of the terrain. All right, so that's the basics of the bases, but now we also need to address these seams here, because you're going to be wanting to interact with these seams, these pipe seams, in most of your games. The reason for that is once these pipe seams are busted, you have a direct route from this base to the center of the map with no forest in the way. Okay, so these aren't going to slow you down. And what this means is, so as soon as you bust one of these down, this base is actually your most efficient vehicle base. It's even better than this one. Now, sometimes getting one base, one extra move of efficiency is not that big of a deal, and is not necessarily worth investing the time it takes to actually bust down the pipe seam. But in this map, because it's small, it ends up being really important. So the first question that you're probably going to ask is, well, there's 2 pipe seams, and they kind of seem similar, right? Like one goes this way and the other goes this way, but the movement overall seems very similar. Which one should I break? And the answer is you should break this one. Okay, you should break this one. And the reason is there's basically no reason why this one would ever benefit you more than breaking this one. But there are some situations where breaking this one would benefit you more than breaking this one. So the reason is this C tile. So there's no way that you can basically send units up this way to the top side of the map faster, because you already need to go over to this column. And if you're in this column, then it's the same as going this way. So if you're trying to get units up here, they're equal. But if you want to have units over here towards that side of the map, then having it go this way and then back down is actually really inefficient. So anyway, TLDR, break that one if you're going to choose one to break, or when you choose one to break. And that is something that you can choose to do very early. You don't have to do it very early. And one of the things that you want to keep in mind as you break pipe seams is that when you attack a pipe seam, it gives information to your opponent about how much damage the pipe seam has taken. And that is regardless of the fog of war, because obviously your opponent cannot see to your side of the map where you're busting the pipe seam, but they will still get notified about that. And based on how much damage the pipe seam takes, you can kind of tell what units have been built. And generally, you're going to want your vehicles to be attacking those pipe seams. So you can very easily calculate what units may have been built if you try to attack the pipe seam early. Especially if you open up with an artillery first, sometimes that can actually make you vulnerable to recon harass, because your opponent knows that you have an artillery as your first vehicle because you spent time beating down your own pipe seam. And so your opponent knows, oh, my recon out on the map can attack any infantry that it sees, because there's not enough money to have a tank or another recon out to defend the infantry, so I've got free reign. So there is some risk reward there, but at the same time, it is a priority to get that down. Another little quirk about the bases is player 2's starting infantry. So this infantry starts on this base, and generally you use your pre-deployed infantry to go straight to the neutral base and cap that. However, for player 1's going to start building two infantry, obviously. So I'm just going to kind of skip ahead to the first 2 turns just so you can get this illustrated. But for player 2, there's no cities within 1 move of this base, and there's a city here that's within 1 move of this base. So for player 1, this infantry is going to be the infantry to go here and capture this base, because this infantry is going to go to the city. But for player 2, the pre-deployed infantry is from here. Okay, this may not seem like a big deal, but in practice what it means is that the captures going this way for player 2 are going to be a little bit behind the captures for player 1 in this direction. And likewise, the captures for this direction for player 2 are going to be a little bit faster than the captures in this direction for player 1, because this first infantry is going to get to go down here right away, and this infantry for player 1 has to go and capture the base. So when you're thinking about doing maybe early harassment or recon harass, you want to keep that in mind, because generally speaking, player 1 is going to be kind of out here sooner, and then player 2 is going to be down here sooner. So there may be opportunities that differ depending on which player you are. Okay, briefly, let's cover some of the other bases. So we've got airports in the back here. They're a little bit annoying to capture because you have to send an infantry kind of 2 moves over this way, and then the infantry is in no man's land in the back. So you don't really need to prioritize the airport. T-copters aren't super great on this map most of the time, and extending onto the map is generally better, so you can kind of leave that airport for a while, and you'll see that when we get into the games. In the center of the map, we also have this port here, and this map is, I think, a little bit infamous for sometimes in the late game, things can get a little weird because people will sometimes deploy battleships onto these ports. It's a pretty big investment, but a battleship can cover a tremendous amount of area with the range. You can basically cover like the entire center area and then a lot of these properties here. So that's something that you can see from time to time, but I wouldn't consider it unless things got pretty late And then as far as comm towers go, just one comm tower for each side in the middle. It's a very, very safe comm tower, not harassable realistically, not capturable realistically either for the other opponent. So you're never going to get like both comm towers. And if you ever do get 2 comm towers, you probably already won. And so it's kind of silly. And the HQs are over here with a black boat. Rarely will you ever see an HQ capture on this map. It's just so far back that it's unlikely to ever happen without the game being decided for other reasons. Okay, and I think that covers a lot of the basic features of the map. Let's talk about properties now. So one interesting thing about this map is there are a ton of contestable properties considering the size of the map. The 2 most contestable properties on the map are these 2 in the center. These are very, very difficult to flip once they've been captured, and it, especially depending on the matchup, in tier 2, especially extraordinarily difficult to flip these. Next, these 2 properties are probably the next 2 most contested ones. These, I would say, are like 3rd. And then maybe 4. And rarely will you see this one flip. Okay. So I'm gonna order these. So we got 1 here, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. Okay, so that's your very well driven, well drawn. Oh boy, words are tough tonight. These are your priorities in order. Okay, as far as what is most likely to get flipped. Now, what belongs to who? So you can kind of draw a diagonal, through the center of the map, which I did very poorly there. But basically, this line is 1 tile closer to player 1, and this line is 1 tile closer to player 2. So basically what that means is the map is going to split like this. Yeah, that's generally how the map divides by default. But all 4 of these properties are on a diagonal. So in practice, you could flip sides, and sometimes you will see situations where player 2 will commit everything to pushing this way, and player 1 will be like, okay, fine, I'll just push this way, and then the sides will flip. You can see that. So if that happens, oftentimes the player that wins will be the player who is able to capitalize on that quickly, or more quickly than their opponent. But that is definitely a thing that can happen, and oftentimes if you are able to consolidate your side, then a common mistake I see is, say player 1 gets all these properties, and they're like, oh, okay, I'm strong up here. Now I'm just gonna, keep pushing this way. No, that is wrong. Don't do that. It's really, really hard to get these properties. The correct way to do it is to kind of play defense up here and then just shift your focus to putting pressure on here or going in the middle. Okay, so especially like this property, super bait. You you're almost never going to get it. So I've seen games where people really invest a lot of army value trying to take this property, just because it's close to other properties that they control, and it's a fool's gold property. So don't be a fool. Sometimes you just gotta accept that the property belongs to the opponent. There's a lot of contested properties on this map. Just go for the other side. That's the right way to do it. Okay. That's the map. Let's talk about COs. And this is a tier 3 CO pool. And in tier 3, there is basically only 2 COs that are viable on this map, in my opinion. That would be Kindle and Drake. And in this game, I will be playing Kindle, and Ghost will be playing Drake. So we got some nice variety, not a mirror match for once. And the reason that both of these COs are very viable is for Drake, the airport is very far back. So Drake's weaker copters are not as important because airports aren't quite as good because they're just so far back. Air is less of a priority. And also, I mean, obviously global damage is very good, but I think equal income is 22k. So the income, despite this map being very small, the total income on the map is actually pretty high. And so that makes global damage COs pretty good. If the game ever gets into a situation where you build a battleship here, obviously Drake got really strong battleships. And yeah, so Drake, very solid. The reason Kindle is really, really good is there's so many cities packed into such a small map that the day-to-day CO power for Kindle is absolutely cracked. This becomes really obvious if you take a look at some of the terrain. And this may not be something that you've thought about before. So I want you to just kind of take a moment and stare at this with me, and I'll kind of do my best to make it really clear, because this is something that you can look for in other maps. So I want to look at some of these forest tiles here. So here, here, and here. Actually, let's do for player 1. So player 1 would be here, here, and here. So I'm playing Kindle, and I'm player 1 in this. So these 3 tiles, these are on player 1's side of the map. So this is my side. Although this tile here is pretty close to the line of the center. But regardless, this one belongs to me. So if I have a unit here, say an infantry or an artillery, if my opponent wants to destroy the unit that is in this forest, they are going to have to place units here and here. One to reveal it, and then another to attack it. Same thing goes for this forest up here. The units will likely be going here and here. For this one, units will have to go here and here. And one thing that you're going to notice about all of those squares is that they are directly next to cities. So this line here and this square here create a really, really strong front to fight along that forces your opponent to be in a very precarious situation, because whenever you're going up against Kindle, you don't really want to leave your units on cities too much. Once the CO meter once the meter is filled up sufficiently, right? And in the early game, it doesn't matter as much. But once Kindle has that CO power available, you don't want to leave units on there, because if Kindle pops the CO power, then all of those units are going to take 3 HP damage for free. So the more units you have on cities, the more damage it's going to do to you. So you want to stay off the cities. But you also want to stay off the tiles that are next to cities, because if Kindle attacks you from a city, that unit is going to get a 40% attack bonus, and that's really, really strong. So because there's just so many cities so close together, and because of the way the forests interact with those cities, with the positioning, there's kind of nowhere that ends up being safe. So trying to stay out of danger, especially as Drake in this matchup, requires a lot of finesse, and it's just very difficult. And as Kindle, you can put your opponent in really difficult situations where they kind of have to put units on cities, because if they don't, then it's going to get really bad, and then you're going to get more value out of your CO power. And especially if you can clear units off cities when you have a CO power, then any adjacent unit to the city, like if you have a tank, if you have like a tank wall here, and then also here, and you clear the tank off here, and Kindle gets a tank on here with a CO power, any tank gets one shot that's next to this city, right? So it's very easy to eat a bunch of tanks, basically, and really swing things in a way that can compensate for Kindle's disadvantage of not having like a true global damage power like Drake does. Drake and Kindle have very different incentives on this map in terms of what they want to happen. Kindle wants a very brawly game, because the lower the total unit value is on the map, the less damage Kindle is going to take from Drake's global damage, right? So if you have 100k on the map, then Drake's power is going to do 20k. If you have 200k on the map, then Drake's power is going to do 40k. So the more things stall out, and the more the armies develop, that's generally going to be better for Drake. There could be exceptions, because obviously the more units you have on the map, the more you have to play around cities and things like that. But broadly speaking, and then likewise, Kindle wants to brawl, because generally speaking, Kindle's CO power, as far as the economic damage that it does, it usually doesn't depend that much on how many units are out on the map. Generally, you're gonna hit the units that got deployed this turn. So whatever got built, you're gonna hit that, and then maybe you'll get some extra units that are out on the map, but that's just kind of a bonus. And so an easy way to calculate that is just take 30% of your opponent's total income in a split map situation. So in this map, it's 22k, and so you can expect to get 30% of that for your turn if you use your CO power, and so that's roughly 7k or so, and hopefully you can get 2 CO powers for 1 superpower of Drake, roughly again. So you're looking at like 2 times 7, it's 14k of damage. And if Drake is using superpower against you and you have 100k worth of units, then that's going to do 20k of damage. So you're looking at 14k of damage versus 20k of damage. It's not horrible, right? Like your day-to-day advantage on the being able to fight on cities might be able to compensate for a 6k advantage. But if the game stalls out and now you're 200 versus 200 on the map in terms of army value, then Drake's doing 40k with that superpower, and your CO power as Kindle is still probably only doing about 7k. Maybe you can do a little bit more, but the scaling of that power is strongly in Drake's favor. So with that in mind, that is going to dictate a lot of how the early game goes, because Kindle wants to force a situation where Drake cannot sit around and build up a huge army and then leverage the economics of just having global damage with large armies. So with that being said, with the mindset, I guess, established of what each CO wants to do, I think we can finally jump into this replay now that we're at the 30-minute mark of me rambling about the map. And we're going to do a lot of math in this replay and a lot of counting, because it really, really matters. And there's actually some more stuff that I could have probably put in the map review section that we'll get into as we go through this replay. But I think it might make more sense and be well demonstrated when I show you in the context of the actual map, or in the actual replay. So let me hide my opponent's units, and I think let me hide the fog. Okay, so we're on my perspective here, and we are good to go. Let's jump into this replay. Oops, I just skipped a turn. Okay, well, anyway, so standard stuff. Normal cap phase. You always want to bring this infantry up here, because then technically you can choose to either go here or here. So you have the option value. No day 3 recon or anything like that. We're just going to keep it on the up and up. And so again, we can move up here because we're equally distant to here and here, so we can choose later. I like to get this one first just because it's farther away, and this guy has the option to go here as well. It's very efficient. One nice thing about Scavenger is that the captures, they're aesthetically pleasing, I guess. It's not like these maps where everything's 4 moves away and you feel like your infantry moves are just super inefficient and you're not able to move everything as far as you want. Scavenger tends to have a pretty efficient and straightforward capture route. So anyway, we're just doing capture stuff, and I just want to get a lot of infantry out on the field. I'm not super interested in harassing. One nice thing about Kindle is that Kindle tends not to get harassed very much, and the reason for that is a tank counterattack onto a harassing recon is basically always an insta-kill. And especially in a map this small, it is extremely risky to try and harass into Kindle. And likewise, Kindle tends to be the harasser, and Drake tends to be the one that goes for tanks early instead of recons. So just keep in mind the incentives. Like, that's generally what each CO wants to do. And the converse of that is, as Kindle, you generally can get away with not protecting your captures because you're just unlikely to be harassed. It's dangerous to harass you, so take advantage of that. One nice thing about this base, I didn't cover this in the map review, but the infantry can come across this river tile and go up here. And then now this infantry is in the clear, can go this way, can go this way. So this is a very nice way to get infantry to the center of the map. It's not quite as efficient as from this base, but it is a good way to get infantry into this area, and it's still pretty efficient. And so I am opening artillery first, and the reason for that is we kind of talked about this, but this tile is crazy. It is absolutely nuts for artillery because you can lock this city, and those cities are actually, they're supposed to belong to your opponent. So if you can get an artillery in these woods and defend it, then your opponent has to attack you, because if they don't, they're never going to get these contested cities that belong to them. So honestly, like, these two tiles are like the most important tiles on the entire map that aren't properties. And you've really got to know, what goes into these tiles, and be aware of that, because it's just a really, really strong position. So I've got an early artillery, and the idea here is I want to grab control of the center of the map, and I want to try and force Drake to fight into infantry that are already on cities. That is not fun to do against Kindle. You really want to get onto the city before Kindle can get onto the city. Then Kindle has nothing special going for her. But if Kindle's got infantry on your city, then sometimes it can be really painful to deal with that, because you have to take extra damage to interrupt the caps. And you're also really vulnerable to counterattacks. Okay. So a lot of moves going on for my opponent. So I want to highlight this. I guess you can't really see it because I think the cursor is off screen, but the health on this pipe seam was lowered to 84. The tooltip is off the side of my screen. It's cropped off. So just believe me that that it is at 84, and so that basically means that there's a mech. So that's actually really interesting, and I talked about this earlier, how if you attack the pipe seam really early, it kind of broadcasts information about your opener to your opponent. So now I know that there was a mech made last turn, and the nice thing about this is it kind of narrows down the possibilities of what your opponent can be doing. So like, I know that there wasn't like a really early recon, like day 3 recon is impossible now, I think. And I also know that there's no tank, right? So normally I think you could get a day 5 tank as Drake, but we know that there can't be a tank out on day 5. The one thing I am worried about is you can make a mech and a recon. And so I'm thinking like, this is like a infantry mech recon. Definitely possible. And also concerning, because you'll see soon, but my plan is to basically get here very early. And part of the meta game that I'm trying to take advantage of here is I want Drake to make tanks early. Tanks are good against harass, but they are bad at vision. And so the way you can exploit tanks is by having aggressive capture moves and taking contested properties early, because the tanks are not going to be able to see you do it. And so you can often get away with things that you might not be able to get away with. So I'm trying to take advantage of the meta here, knowing that Drake wants to defend with tanks in their opener, to defend against recon harass. So I've designed an opener here to basically exploit a lack of vision. But I don't like what I see, because I see this mech, and now I'm kind of hoping that Drake goes tanks, but now I know that Drake can't have a tank. There's not enough money for Drake to have a tank. And if Drake doesn't have a tank, then maybe Drake has a recon. And if Drake has a recon, then Drake's going to see all the shenanigans I'm trying to pull. So I'm a little nervous about that. Not really super happy to see the mech. But attacking this pipe this early often means that the follow-up to the mech is going to be an artillery. And it's just going to be Drake spending the first few turns knocking down this pipe seam immediately. And if that's the case, then actually my plan's fine. So we'll see what happens. We don't know. But it's a little bit uncomfortable. And there's no real right way to do it, because every opener loses to something. You're not going to lose the whole game, but like, some openers give you an edge, and some openers are going to put you a little bit behind, and you just got to live with that aspect of it and try to adapt as best you can. But we are getting some free information, and we are sure as heck going to take advantage of that. So anyway, we know there's a mech out there. You can see that I've delayed this airport capture. Like, I'm pretty far out on the map, and now I'm just finally sending a blob, down here to the airport to catch that. Okay, and I get a recon out, and I get another recon out. So notice that I had 9,000 funds, and so another alternative that I could do is to do the tank infantry, but I want to have vision, and I've actually timed this out. So I'm going to skip ahead, but this is a build that I had planned completely in advance. But basically, the idea behind this build is this infantry is going to go here, and this infantry is going to go here. And then I'm going to try to get infantry on both of these cities in the center, because these are the two most important properties. And at the same time, these recons are both going to be able to get on the map to be able to see both of these properties before I have to move the infantry on there. If I don't do this, if I build a tank, then this move ends up being a little bit risky, because I have to hope that basically nothing's trapping me on either of those center tiles. But with this specific build, I will have the recon vision the same turn that I would move those infantry there. And also that gives me the option to abandon ship. Like if I see that, especially if I see a recon, I don't necessarily have to go through with it, and I can use the infantry to cap something else. So got the option value. So it's kind of like we got the plan A and we got plan B, and might get some more information from our opponent depending on what happens to the pipe seam, and we're doing all the calculations. But that's what we're going for. We'll see if it ends up happening. So now my opponent's turn, and pipe seam got bumped down again to 69. It's very nice. So we know that the mech attacked again, but nothing else. So we just kind of have to send the recons out. And we're setting up that position that I mentioned last turn, but some standard cap stuff. This is a little bit of an uncomfortable turn. I know that I can get this recon to here, but I also know that my opponent can get a recon to here in 2 moves. And so if there was a recon that was built on the same turn as that mech, and that recon was built from this base, and that recon took the most logical path to the city, and that recon is going to see this tank, is going to see this artillery, and that's not going to be good for me, because it's also going to see this, and my plan is, well, it's not going to be much of a secret. So I'm just really hoping that there's not a recon here, and that would be the counter to this opener. Is you have a day 4 recon that ends up on this base, or even like a day 5 recon. But again, it's unlikely that a recon would come in to attack this artillery, because if the recon comes in and attacks the artillery, this is the only square that it can do from, and then any sort of any tank follow-up by me, which we know we could have done, would just kill the recon instantly, and then I just repair the artillery. So that trade would be good for me. But even as is, I'm actually going to delay. Yeah, right on time. I'm not actually going to send this guy over to the comm tower. I'm going to send him over here so that I have the option to get this city instead to get more income. To leave this open just in the unlikely event that there ends up being a recon here and he gets really feisty and decides to go in this artillery. Because then if I cap this comm tower, then I have this awkward decision to make where, like, do I pull the infantry off the comm tower to make room for this recon to come hit the other recon to get the bonus attack? It's like, I don't want that. We can delay the comm tower turn. Like, if we're not fighting, then the comm tower capture doesn't mean anything. So anyway, plans upon plans upon plans. And now we get the tank out. So I'm trying to play land grab, where again we want to get control of this center really, really early. And in this matchup, if any cities you get in the center, it's really hard to lose them unless something catastrophic happens. So I'm kind of hoping I can pull a fast one and then just have them for the rest of the game and play defense. Okay, so this turn, the Pipeseam is down to 9 HP, which means that it got hit by an artillery and the mech. So the mech has done 3 shots on the Pipeseam, and then it also took a hit from an artillery. So that's good now. So now I know that there's probably not a recon, because the artillery was made, and then the artillery was moved to here, presumably. And then finally the recon attacked. So there was like a artillery made 2 turns ago, or three turns ago. Build, move, attack 2 turns ago. Counting is hard. Anyway, we'll be doing a lot of it soon though. Just wait. So feeling much better about my opener now. Seems unlikely that I'm going to get hard countered. And now our recons are out, so we can kind of see everything. And we see that infantry down there, so it's like, oh, well, unlikely to be able to capture this city for free. But at the same time, we're going to set up a trap. Sure, he can see it, but it's never fun trying to send an infantry to contest a city against Kindle. Because you're taking that extra counterattack damage. And the terrain is not wonderful for it either. One other thing that I've adapted here, so this guy could have gone, I guess, more directly to here. But since I've seen this artillery hitting the Pipeseam, I'm not worried about any harass at all. And I've got vision as well. So now I'm positioning myself for a more aggressive line of captures. I want to get these 3 cities, because these 3 are more contestable than this one. That one's 1 square back of the diagonal, so to speak. So it's actually safer than the other 3. So I'm just going to be a little bit more aggressive and just make sure that I get what's mine as quickly as possible. That is the downside of going right after the Pipeseam, is you're giving away information that you're not going to be attacking anything. So now let's see. I've kind of set the trap here, right? Like, I've got really good vision. I got my artillery in position. Let's see what shows up. I see an infantry come over here. This position is amazing for recons, because you see this entire vertical. So nothing is going to hit you over here without you seeing it if you've got a recon here. Okay, and this infantry goes into this, so it's in range of the artillery, so that's nice. I see another infantry down there, and now there's all sorts of infantry showing up. Pipeseam goes boom. Okay, we see an infantry kind of pop through here, so it looks like he captured this city. Okay, so good news, bad news. The good news is I'm getting this city, so that's great. So this is like one of the most contested cities in the map, and I've got it locked down already by day 9. That's great. Not going to be able to steal this one, even though my artillery is here. If I leave this infantry capping this, it's just going to die. So the correct thing to do here, I kind of waffled over some of the different options here. There's some plays where I can basically try to attack this infantry with this guy, and there's like a roll, I think, to actually kill this. And then that would disguise the fact that I have an artillery waiting and maybe get some more value next turn. But in the end... Oh yeah, and I was pretty sure that this artillery was here as well. There's 9 HP on this Pipeseam. And we know that there was an artillery built, and it was almost certainly here. Because that's where you would move it after one move. So you can finish this Pipeseam with the mech or with a tank, kind of looping around this way. So naturally, the artillery moves somewhere last turn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a really logical place, and especially considering, the infantry wall getting set up here. I was pretty confident that artillery was there even without seeing it, but now we have confirmation. So definitely not going to stick around. We can contest this tile and prevent our opponent from getting it, but we can't really take it ourselves. That's okay. We just take what we can get, right? We play it by ear, and we're going to continue our caps. And we just pull the infantry back. So that's great. We've slowed down any potential capture of that city, and we got a free infantry. We can repair that 6 HP infantry if we want, or we can use it to fight later on. We'll see what happens. That will determine what we do with that infantry. But overall, like, pretty successful opener. But we have to be a little bit careful now, because the opponent's Pipeseam is down, and this changes the map a lot. And I think now is when we need to start talking about the math. So normally in the early game, you're not making more than 1 vehicle per turn. And so if you're making 1 vehicle per turn, building it from this factory is fine. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we can kind of draw a diagonal down the center of the map for where the 2-turn tank move is. So any square touching this diagonal is within 2 moves of a tank. And you can see that this diagonal is on my side of the map, on player 1 side of the map, but still very, very close to the center of the map. So that's the best we can do for 1 vehicle per turn. However, let's pretend like I'm busting down this Pipeseam. So this Pipeseam gets busted. Now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now we are getting 1 square closer with any tanks built from this factory. What this means, and actually player 2's line is going to kind of intersect, right? So the two tank move lines, the diagonals, meet in the center. So what this means is that if you overextend any units beyond this diagonal, you are essentially creating an enemy tank. I don't know if this concept makes sense, but I want you to consider it, especially if you're a new player, because sometimes you might not think about overextending in this way, but because, again, this map is so small, and because these diagonals for both players end up literally like adjacent to each other, the punishment for stepping one square too far, basically, it's going to create one tank that suddenly can fight against you that previously would not be able to do anything to you. Because think about it. So your opponent is busted down this pipe seam. They're building tanks from this factory because that's the fastest way to get tanks to the front. So they're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if you have anything on this diagonal, that newly built tank is going to be able to hit that. And they're going to be fighting with one more tank than they could otherwise. But if everything is back just one square, then that tank might as well not exist because it can't hit you. And sure, it's delayed one turn, and it's still going to be a problem next turn. But if both of the COs are sending all their stuff into the center, which is, you know, very reasonable thing to do on this map, that's often how the games go, then things can snowball very easily. And so having an extra tank for one turn for the fight could end up killing an extra tank. And then suddenly you're trying to fight into one more tank than you would have otherwise, and you have to retreat. And then your opponent gets control of the middle, and things get really out of control. So overextending on this map is really, really punishable. And you're going to see my positioning very, very precise on this map, more so than other maps. I'm going to be extremely careful about crossing this line with any units, because I don't want to create tanks for my opponent. I built a bunch of recons, and if my opponent is literally just pumping nothing but tanks, then I need to be very careful, because I don't want to get snowballed and then, you know, have to fight up against global damage when I can't fight head to head. So that's like a real problem. So just pay attention as this game goes on. The positioning, it's going to be really obvious sometimes, but we are going to be real careful about crossing this diagonal. More on this later. We know that he might come in here and attack me and send the infantry to see it. Although I kind of moved this guy in to see if maybe there was like a tank back here, and I didn't see anything. So I'm set up here to basically counterattack. I've put this tank here to bait, but I don't think that anything can hit this. I did some calculations and I don't remember them all, but anyway, I know that my artillery can be attacked, but attacking this artillery means units have to be here and here, which means that if these two squares are empty, then they're going to be vulnerable to counterattack. Additionally, attacking here and here, it's crossing the diagonal. So conversely, just like I said I need to be careful about not crossing this diagonal. He needs to be careful about not crossing this diagonal. And if you're here and here attacking my artillery, you've crossed the diagonal. You've crossed the 2-tank move. Now, actually, my pipe seam is not busted down yet, so that my opponent has a window of time where he doesn't need to worry about that precision, but I have to worry about the precision. And the reason I need to build an artillery now is I need to get this pipe seam down, because the longer this pipe seam is up, it's effectively gonna mean I can't contest the center. Anyway, that was I probably spent more time talking about that than we needed to. Let's move on here. So we see that there was a tank from this side. So I was kind of expecting the tank to have been built from this base, but it looks like it was built from this base instead. Not really a super important detail. Just not what I expected, but I guess my opponent wanted to defend against harass over there. And now the artillery goes on the city. So this is really aggressive. We see the mech show up. We knew that mech had existed, and it doesn't have any ammo because it spent all of its bazookas firing at the pipe seam, so that's kind of funny. So it'll have to wait on the city before it can be anything more than a glorified expensive infantry. But we do see everything, right? So this recon sees everything. It's really nice. Okay, so at the risk of beating a dead horse, I talked about this diagonal, right, for my opponent. But actually, I'm not able to benefit from that because I'm still building tanks from this base. And this base is kind of one square back. So right now, the diagonal for my opponent is like here. So this is where I can get in 2 moves. So as long as my opponent stays behind this line, he's safe. And that's exactly what he's done. So this is good. This is good positioning for my opponent. But as soon as I break down this pipe seam, this is not going to cut it. So just keep that in mind. I won't belabor this point anymore. And you can see now that this is a little bit scary because there's more tanks for my opponent. I've got 1 tank that can fight right now. And my opponent, I see 2 here, right? So this is spooky, but my opponent's kind of overextending, and all of these units are very vulnerable. And the only damage that was really done was just to this artillery. So all of my infantry and my recons are all ready to get first strikes on all these units. So this is going to be a really powerful salvo, and I have to make this count. So I'll spare you some of the calculations, but this is a roll. It's like it was like I think it's like 80% for that to kill. So I just did that first. Because if I don't get that, then I have to totally recalibrate my plan. But we got the roll there. It was pretty heavily in our favor, but it's still a roll. I'm moving back here. So that's another infantry. That's another infantry down. And what we're going to do is we're gonna go for this artillery on here, because if we can clear this guy off, then we get a bonus infantry for free because we're Kindle. The downside is that we only have a tank and a recon to attack this artillery, and this is also a roll. And so it actually ends up being pretty substantial, because if this artillery lives with 1 HP, then I don't get this bonus infantry. The good news is that if I don't if I don't win the roll, I do have a backup plan. I can send this guy over here and probably kill the mech. It would be a little bit overextending, and I don't really want to do that if I can help it. But it's there. So let's see if I get the roll. And I do get it. So this is especially nice because now I have a recon on here. So now he can't come in with a tank and hit my tank from the city. So even though I only had one tank against two, we managed to set up a pretty good defensive position here. We are a little bit extended further than we want to be, but we kept our artillery alive, and we killed his, and it's a good start. The infantry fight was really good. We killed 5 units. So that's, I mean, for 4 units that turn, right? So that's, if you get a really decisive, good infantry engagement early on, a lot of times that can snowball because you got more infantry. Your infantry are fighting their infantry generally. So if you got more infantry, then you tend to fight better against the infantry. I could have interrupted the city with this guy, but I actually think that getting my income set up is more important than harassing. And I don't realistically think I can deny this city. I'm just settling for denying this city, and we'll give up the rest. Sometimes I think people get a little bit too crazy about denying stuff. It's a good way to lose extra infantry. So, unfortunately, this is a little bit of misfortune, I guess, bad luck. My opponent deployed AA, probably tank like the previous turn. So if this AA was delayed another turn, there's no way that actually anything can hit this this tank. Just believe me, because basically this infantry would take 2 hits, and there's no way to get 2 hits and also have another tank left over to hit this tank. So just kind of unlucky the way that the build worked out. It's not too crazy. Like, so that anti-air was built on day 8, which is a pretty normal normal anti-air timing. Maybe a little early, but not too crazy. So unfortunate. And then my tank takes a hit there on the shoal, which is pretty painful. And then both of my recons get popped as well. So that's not great. With that being said, we notice some things. So having this recon here, again, vision really important. We notice our opponent pulling back. So that means that we're very confident that we've got more infantry up here than our opponent does here. So we may think about making a play for this area. Probably wouldn't make a play for this city, but we might try to put some pressure on this city. But we need to wait for the time to be right, because it's pretty tough to take that without at least some vehicle support. And even though we kind of took a beating this turn, but again, the terrain is really, really important. And also, whoops, I just yoinked out of the game. That's fun. Forget everything that just happened. All right. All right, we're back. I don't know why I hit escape there. The terrain is very important. This is city, and this is a tank on a shoal. Kindle is going to massacre that tank. When your Kindle against Drake, your tanks on cities are kind of invulnerable. It's not literally true, but that's how you should think about it. Unless Drake has artillery, if you put your tank on a city, it is going to be very painful for Drake to remove it, because attacking into a tank on a city, the counterattack damage is pretty severe, especially in the middle of the map. The terrain around the city is really low defense, so doubly painful. So we took a beating, but the positional advantage is really good, and we're still getting value out of that 4 HP artillery, which ours is still alive, and our opponent's has died. And the timer on this pipe seam is going to be ending soon. So pretty soon we're going to have our kind of don't cross line moved up one square. But for now, we're kind of trickling in tanks from this bottom base as fast as we can, spending 3 moves to get up to the front, which is kind of painful. But that's... Hopefully we can hold off the tank onslaught long enough using Kindle's day-to-day for us to break down the pipe seam. So it's another pretty technical turn. I'm going to go through it all, then I'll explain it. Okay. There's a lot of little details here. I'm just going to run through them. So first of all, look at the positioning. Everything is across this diagonal very deliberately. Except for the tank, which is on a city. So sure, you know, I'm creating some tanks by having this tank up, but the only thing that the tanks can attack into is a Kindle tank on a city. So, and anything that attacks a Kindle tank on a city is going to be next to a city next turn. And now Drake has to worry about CO powers of Kindle. So removing that tank would involve putting lots of tanks next to a city right in time for Kindle to have a CO power. So you can see why Kindle's creating positioning dilemmas for Drake. Drake can't get rid of this tank very easily without potentially creating a situation where there's going to be a really devastating counterattack where Kindle eats a tank for free because it's next to this city. So we're fine with that. We damaged this tank from full instead of like maybe damaging this one further because we're Kindle. And if Drake wants to repair those tanks, then they're going to have to go on cities. And if they go on cities, then they're going to be vulnerable to Kindle's CO power. So we want to spread the damage around. Not super worried about like weakening individual units. We don't care that this artillery is totally unprotected. If anything comes in to attack this artillery, they are crossing the line, right? So they would be within 2 tank moves of this base. So that would be a pretty severe overextension. So basically, we talked about like creating tanks, right? Any vehicle that attacks this artillery creates a counterattack for this tank that otherwise would not be there. So, and any counterattack with this tank is going to be more valuable than probably whatever was used to kill the 4 HP artillery. So, big fan of that. And it's one of those dilemmas, right? Like, you really hate the fact that the 4 HP artillery is there, but at the same time, anything that destroys it is basically on a suicide mission. Lastly, we're putting this recon in danger. It's in danger. And the reason it's put there is to get killed. It is being put there to get killed on purpose. I don't want to repair it. And Drake's going to get superpower soon, so this recon's value is very limited. But it is at 3 HP, and 3 HP is high enough HP to not get pinged down by an infantry. So if Drake wants to kill this recon, it's going to take a vehicle hit. And any vehicle hit that kills this recon is going to be next to a city. You see where I'm going with this, right? Like if you kill something of Kindle's that's on a city, then you're next to the city. And so that makes you vulnerable to counterattack. So Kindle creates positioning dilemmas. And we're going to take advantage of that. So let's see what Drake does now. All right, so lots of tanks. One nice thing about this game so far is just I've had really good vision of pretty much everything. So when you have good vision, you're generally going to be able to come up with the best plan possible. Nothing's going to surprise you. We haven't seen a single Drake recon yet. It's been basically all tanks and then some anti-airs. And then obviously that first artillery. So Drake is just kind of hoping to overwhelm Kindle with pure tank numbers, but this turn got overextendy. This turn got big time overextendy, and now the Kindle day-to-day is going to wreak absolute havoc. You might think that it's worth using the CO power here, but I actually don't need it. This tank is damaged, and so a full HP tank shot on this guy from a city is just going to kill it, even without the CO power. And this tank hitting this anti-air is like a roll for either 1 HP or 2 HP. So sure, I'd kill it if I use the CO power, but I really want to get more charge if I can. And I really think there's a lot of value in just kind of having the CO power ready to deploy at any time, because if you have it, Drake has to play around the cities every single turn, even if you don't use it. So it's just, it creates just a nightmare of positioning issues, and Drake's never going to get a reprieve from that. And I'll get my bar up to full, and then I can use one, and then it could still potentially be ready for the next turn, and then Drake still has to play around the positioning dilemmas a lot. So anyway, and with that being said, this turn, so we've got the artillery and the copter here that can go into the pipe seam. So now finally, this is our power spike coming up. Now that our CO power is online, and Drake still is a little bit away from super, and this pipe seam is down, so we can now push that that line of do not cross goes all the way finally to this diagonal. And so in the future, we're going to be able to punish overextensions with more tanks that are going to get created out of thin air, to follow the metaphor that I'm using. Anyway, so with that being said, just enjoy the turn. Just getting maximum value out of this anti-air. It would not have been able to attack anything else, and I don't really care that he knows that I have an anti-air, because Drake doesn't really want to build copters. So guaranteed kill on that infantry, and now that tank goes bye-bye. That anti-air, we got a nice roll there. That's a high roll. Not like it's still over 50% to hit that much. But now I can YOLO infantry attack, and I get that roll as well. Again, I think that was still over 50% to kill that, but we got a nice roll there. And now, again, this tank being up, overextended into this forest, means that this tank gets to get a counterattack opportunity. Otherwise, it would not have been able to do anything. So that ends up making a pretty big difference, because now that tank ends up getting cleared. And we just killed 3 tanks. So actually it was 2 tanks and anti-air. Anyway, three vehicles. Really, really decisive turn. And unfortunately, we might get supered next turn. But the way the charge works out, even if we get supered, the super is going to be at the end of our opponent's turn rather than the beginning. And so that's something that's kind of the best case scenario. You really want to avoid Drake being able to superpower and then also get the plus 20 attack and defense for the rest of their turn. You kind of want Drake to have to attack with everything to build up the charge to get the superpower, and then the only benefit of the superpower is you took 2 damage and everything, but the plus 20% is less of a factor. So the charge is looking pretty good, but we may get supered this turn, so could be a thing. So we're going to prepare for that, and you can look at the positioning. I put that recon down there just to make sure that there's no infantry down here. I want to see if he was maybe planning on attacking that that city combined with his power timing, but there's no infantry close enough to do that now, so that's good to know. And that recon is going to get massacred by the CO power, so recon's not going to be fighting anytime soon. And we're just kind of spamming tanks. We left a little bit of money to save for repairs. But again, all of our infantry up here, just chilling on cities, waiting for the superpower. Repairing your infantry, really good. Do it. Don't always want to repair tanks, but repairing infantry, almost always a good idea. Okay, this is an absolute nightmare turn for Drake. Drake ends up being 750 away from super. So it was at this moment that I knew the writing was on the wall. And you can see that this positioning is really scary for Drake, because it's really vulnerable. There's a tank on a city, and there's a tank next to a city. And if I'm able to clear this tank off, then I basically get another tank for free, and our charge is full, so we're always going to be CO powering this turn. Furthermore, I know I've been talking about this a lot. My pipe seam's down. The diagonal is here now. This is the first turn that the diagonal is here, because this tank is going to be ready to fight. And now the positioning of these tanks creates a tank for me that otherwise would not exist. So again, it's when it comes down to just like who has more tanks, having +1 tank can be really significant. And we've seen the last turn as well. We also had a tank hit a tank because Drake was overextended. So it's these little things, and now all of a sudden there's going to be a really decisive fight because of 2 turns straight of overextensions. It would have been nice to clear off that tank from the city, but we just didn't have the raw numbers. Additionally, you may have heard me mention this before, but if I put tanks on this line, then I'm crossing into the diagonal of the opponent. Look at this positioning. Look at all my vehicles. Boy, there's a very specific angle that they all seem to be at, and it's all lined up with being one range out of the 2 tank reinforce of my opponent. You know, won't continue mentioning it for the next minute until we mention it again, probably next turn. But the positioning is very, very, very intentional, and I want you to know, because on this map, if it comes down to a tank brawl, like, this is how you consistently win tank brawls. Just really deliberate positioning. And now we've got our artillery coming up, so this is gonna, once this artillery is online, we're gonna be able to have like a really dominant stranglehold on the center area. We do get supered, kind of inevitable. Some tactical mistakes by Drake. Drake needs recons before the superpower goes off because rain lowers the vision. And if you don't have recons, you're just kind of running around not able to see anything, especially if you only have infantry. So yeah, you can bet that Drake really wanted to use this tank to hit one of these tanks or the anti-air, but he can't because this is the longest move that he can make. Fighting into the superpower isn't super fun. So we're mostly just interested on staying on our side of the map. We have a slight income advantage, and we've been trading pretty advantageously in terms of just like we killed 17, and I don't think we wouldn't have known these exact numbers, right? But you can see that the trading has been pretty in my favor, and I think that even accounts for the superpower. So the fighting has gone very well. So we can afford the repairs, basically. It's all about just keeping our tank count up. As long as our tank count is higher than our opponents, we're in good shape. And we're going to set up for a pressure on this city, because we can't really assault this line very easily. Like, our infantry, they're getting there slowly. But earlier on, we've had pretty good vision up in this area, and we know that all the vehicles are coming straight down to here. So now that the superpower is done, I want to use these guys to either capture the city or at least put some pressure and force Drake to commit some units up here to push me back. And then any units that come, this way, well, they're not coming this way. And so this fight is going to continue to get better and better for me. And if worst comes to worst and this is defended, all I have to do, I can just walk back, right? Like, nothing wrong with that. And it's tech turn. Again, you want to build your tech from the fastest base to the front, which is here. And now that the rain is lifted, we see that there's a recon on this city. So now I'm like, well, abort plan, abort mission, abort mission. So we'll probably run these guys back next turn. But we see that, you know, we have so much vision, right? It's no mystery where the units are. This isn't like the other game that I commentated where I kept asking where the stuff was. And we know where the stuff is. We know exactly where the stuff is. It's here. Okay, so this is another turn of us seeing literally everything. Now we've kind of expressed our desires to attack up here, and now our opponent has kind of shifted everything over here, which is fine. We definitely can't attack here anymore, so we won't be doing that. We didn't lose anything, though, so that's fine. If you attack and then you don't lose anything and you just walk back, it's, you know, no problem. We forced a reaction. And also, if everything is going this way, then that means nothing is going this way. So we will just attack elsewhere. And now we have this really strong position again where we've got the artillery in the trees, locking both of these cities. You'll never guess the diagonal along which all my units get positioned. Nothing crosses this line. Except for these guys. These guys they're bait. They're just there to get something to go into artillery range. I'm not expecting those infantry to survive or take the city. I'm just forcing him to come fight me. Okay, so this is an infantry massacre, and this game is quickly spiraling very, very heavily in my favor. The vision is really important. We can see exactly what our opponent's trying to do. So first, he wanted to defend here, and then he pulled a few units, and we kind of can count exactly how many units, right? Because we have a recon here, sees the whole column here. So we know exactly how many tanks are attacking here. And so we have a lot of recons, but we can't fight tanks with recons, so that's not good. But we're going to need to shift some guys back. But the key to success is knowing exactly how many guys to shift back, right? We don't want to commit way too much over here and then end up getting run over down here. So knowing the right number of enemy units means we get to make a good plan. And all of these infantry belong to me. Okay, so you'll notice this turn, we've broken the rule of the diagonal a little bit. But still, this position, anything that fights this tank will be next to this city or this city. So we're going to get value out of Kindle's value out of Kindle's day-to-day power, and we also have a CO power queued up whenever. All of this now is covered by the artillery, and also we have a surprise medium tank covering all this. So we now are strong enough where the creation of an extra vehicle for our opponent is not enough to make it too dangerous to cross that line. So it's you got to know when to break the rules. That's what it means to be an expert. So we kind of get wrecked up here a little bit, but we did prepare for it. We have 2 tanks here, and that's 2 tanks there. Oops, 3rd tank. So didn't know about this 3rd one, but still 2 against 3 is kind of okay. It's not ideal, but we do have the artillery coming up. And we do have some like good terrain here. So long term, this is not gonna do much. Additionally, we have the CO power, so we don't need to worry about losing the city. That's the nice thing about Kindle. We can have a turn of grace period where we can muster our forces and break the wall. So this is a total yeet. And I lost some tanks, but I've got a CO power ready. We've got the medium tank reveal, artillery, tank. This tank is going to... So the positioning of this tank... So again, this is my opponent's diagonal. 1 unit has crossed the diagonal, and that creates this tank. And now this tank. 1 more tank to fight with. Okay, so pretty devastating fight there. We didn't kill any units up here, but at the same time, the longer this fight goes, the reinforcements will carry the day. And we won a crushing victory in the middle, and we even stole this city. So the income now is going to start going in our favor pretty heavily, and that's the end. So I would say this is very textbook, but I hope you learned something about positioning on this map. Positioning is not always this precise. It's just on this map because of the way the line between kind of being safe and overextending is literally one square. It really makes a huge difference. So I spend a lot of time discussing that. Probably you're sick of hearing me talk about it, but I hope it's something that you can take with you into your matches and take advantage of that when appropriate for the map that you're playing on. Let's see, what else do I want to cover here? Why don't we do a real quick run through the game with full vision? But I am very tired and I want to wrap this up. All right. Yeah, so we got a mech from here, and so the mech's going to kind of loop around there. And the artillery. So there's nothing wrong, again, there's nothing wrong with this opener, but you are just kind of broadcasting to the world that you're not going to be harassing at all. So any captures are fair game. So you can see it's really just like kind of tank spam here. So as long as he continues tank spamming, I have to be really diligent about my positioning. And that is what Drake wants to do. But the brawliness of the game does favor me. And so this is kind of why my opener created the game that I wanted. Again, we talked about this at the very beginning. Kindle really wants a brawly game to keep the overall unit value of the funds value of the armies to be pretty small, because that way the Drake super will scale less. So I create that kind of game by denying this city, and if I deny this city, Drake has to fight me to try and get enough control to basically cap that city. And if he doesn't, then day limit's a thing eventually. Drake can't just sit on a 1k deficit forever. Drake has to change somehow, either by taking another city or by controlling this. So we've created the circumstances to motivate Drake to actually fight, which is what we wanted. And that was a result of our opener. I'm not a fan of T-copters when you're losing. The idea here is like he's lost the infantry battle, and so he wants to try and reinforce infantry to the front to try and reestablish an infantry advantage. But the problem is that if you're spending money on a T-copter to try and get infantry forward, then the money you spend on the T-copter ends up being at a detriment to your vehicles. And if you lose the vehicle battle, then it kind of doesn't matter how many infantry you have. So it ends up, I don't know, I'm not a fan of trying to do T-copters when you're behind. Just my take on it. But yeah, the threat to all these properties prevents him from committing everything this way. He's forced to defend this because he wasn't really in position to attack here. All the infantry were really far back. So if I threaten this, I'm always going to get here more quickly than he's going to get up to the top left. Okay, that's it. This is a long one. I guess that's kind of the par for the course for me, but it's quite late. I would like to go to sleep, frankly. So I hope this was instructive for you. I hope you learned some things. I hope you can take the lessons from this game into your future games and become a stronger player for it. And yeah, a lot of advanced stuff in this video. So thanks for watching if you're still here, and hopefully I'll have another good video for you in round 3 whenever the bracket kind of gets caught up there. The map is Frostleaf, which is frankly an appalling map. I played a practice game on it, and I think it's probably one of the worst maps I've ever played. So we'll see how that goes. But until then, see you next time, and stay safe. See ya.